We are here with Luke Lickfold. Luke is the manager of AV infrastructure at UQ, and he's a very special friend of ours, both because he's been with us a long time and he's an amazing dancer, but also because UQ was one of the very first adopters of Inimesh. So he's been with us for the whole journey, and we're very excited to speak to him today.
How you going, Chelsea? Neil?
Welcome. Good to talk to you again. You're very welcome. Thanks for joining us. We spoke last at Integrate, which was, it seems like 4 years ago, but it was only a few weeks back, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think time broke during the pandemic. Somebody broke it and they haven't managed to fix it since, along with many other things. But yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
How long have you been in AV?
Essentially 12 years, 11 of which have been at UQ. I had a brief stint at the Department of Justice before that, doing the courtroom AV, baptism by fire there. And then essentially have just, worked my way through from the deeply technical side through to the sort of more design and then design project management, and then I guess just management and team overview things through my 11 years at UQ. So got a good perspective from bottom to top in that sense.
That's amazing, because you would have seen so many changes in that time. AV's changed extremely rapidly in the last decade. What would you say are the biggest changes you've seen in the last 5 years?
For us, definitely the initial big change was going to Inimesh specifically, but really to a cloud control platform. That's something that we had committed to doing before we found Inimesh as a solution. So we were doing that whether it was with Inimate or with something else or somebody else. 5 years later, I'm glad we made that choice. It's worked really well, but we would be here, as far as here being in the cloud control paradigm, regardless. It's where we absolutely had to be, and I would never go back. So there's that. And then, of course, since then, we had the pandemic in the middle there as well, which is the other huge change that's gone on. The amount of teaching space, the amount of hybrid teaching and learning that goes on, but obviously same with the meeting space. The amount of online and hybrid meetings has just absolutely shot up as a result of that. And it's not, obviously during the pandemic, it was less hybrid, more 100% everything online. Post-pandemic, it's like half of that has remained. So we're very much hybrid. And yeah, that's where we're at, I'd say.
So did the pandemic force more velocity and change?
100%, yeah. And it's not like we were already fitting out, go back 10 years ago and a meeting room was just about local presentation. It was just about, AV for talking to people in the room and presenting to people in the room. So it was a much more stripped back thing. I'd say about 7 years ago, we started fitting out meeting rooms for hybrid and online as a standard. That was pre-pandemic. But so by the time we hit the pandemic, a good number of our meeting rooms were ready for that, but it was newer rooms only. And obviously we've rolled out some stuff to make that work everywhere. The teaching spaces were essentially not kitted out for that at all. We had next to zero hybrid or online capability in the teaching spaces, and that was appropriate pre-pandemic. There wasn't any hybrid learning really going on. I shouldn't say none. It's not really near zero. It's more like 5 to 10%. But even what was happening was usually more about connecting campus to campus. So it was more about having this teaching space at Gatton campus joining a VC call with this teaching space at St. Lucia, and you're having a remote presenter from one site to the other, or a cohort of students joining from one site to another. It was really about just that piece, as opposed to having half of the people joining from home, because before the pandemic, that half of the people being students, they wouldn't have known how to join from home, and nobody really had Zoom or knew what it was, etc. So really the pandemic just rammed all of that through and really Wasn't like it changed something that was changing slowly, made it change fast. It was like that was the case for the meeting rooms, for the teaching spaces. It was more, it added a whole new paradigm that absolutely had to happen instantly, where there was mostly nothing.
Is it so going? So with that force change and the speed that was required because of that, then was there anything that you were already aware of, having done this for so long now, that the sort of the wider industry or the wider sector then all of a sudden realized had to be done? That that you'd shout out to people who are about to do this.
I mean, basically, you need the flexibility in your spaces to accommodate different routing and different, sound capabilities, etc. So if you have the more the fully fleshed out teaching spaces that we had, our central teaching spaces, which are all done with a full scale system with, a bunch of appropriate microphones, etc., and a full DSP. They were quite easy to convert to hybrid. We just had to add some stuff and make changes to routing, etc. Whereas a simple, like a more minimal system, which didn't already have a bunch of microphones, etc., it's kind of like needed you to spend the same again that the original system cost to get it up to speed. So I guess just depends on what you're after. But if you want your spaces to be flexible for future challenges, you've kind of got to have some significant AV in there in the first place. And I'd say the main reason we were able to change quickly was because we were set up for full recording. I don't mean video, I just mean audio. But the fact that we were set up to record, well, content and spoken audio, and content audio in our lecture theatres, that was the main reason we were set up, to be able to take what we already had for recording purposes and pipe it into Zoom quickly.
When you look to the next 5 years, what challenges do you think are going to happen in the future?
Look, that's a big one. I mean, essentially, the two things that I said that were the big challenges, the big changes over the last 5 years are still ongoing. I wouldn't say we're still moving to cloud. We've thoroughly moved, really. And that's just about solidifying that, but it's also about maturing that. And that's what's been happening. So our cloud solution is really constantly maturing and evolving. Data would be a huge one. So we're constantly enhancing the data we can get from that solution. It started as a need to replace our control system, and it's become our entire platform for documentation, fleet management, and then usage data, so we can get all of that out of that system. So needing to have that data of how a space is used to inform what spaces are need refurbishment, what spaces need to be changed, whether, document cameras are actually being used in the year 2030 or not. I hope not, etc. So that's data's the huge one that comes from that. But again, that's all out of that same platform that came out of our challenges 5 years ago. The other one being hybrid, that's still here to stay. Unfortunately, I feel like hybrid can be the worst of both worlds. So I feel like the best experience is when everyone's in the room or everyone's online. I feel like that hybrid situation is the most problematic, both from a technology point of view, but also from a user experience. But I don't see it really going away. So that is continuing to be a challenge, and will continue to be one of our key challenges over the next 5 years, is how to improve that.
Gotcha. So this is gone from infrastructure encroachment from AV to AV is central. It's domination, right? So what are those conversations like now with your IT team, with the wider infrastructure team, the data team, InfoSec? Still the same conversations?
The infrastructure network team, I mean, we've gone from being, I'd say 10, 11 years ago when I started, not the new stuff we were putting in then, but the old stuff that we had when I started at UQ. It was like you had a a master controller and a touch panel were the only parts of the AV system that were on the network. So you have a gigantic teaching space, and that's 2 IPs, and that's 2 items on the network of a gigantic lecture theatre with all this equipment that all talks via serial from an AV perspective, and is online basically just for the master's touch panel to communicate to it. Now, every single item in that space is its own, is a networked unit, and they all communicate via IP. And beyond that, there's heaps of items that just weren't there at all before. It's not just that everything that was there's gone to a networked unit. It's that there's heaps of things that weren't there at all. So a big collaborative teaching space, we might have 35 units with an IP address. So we are one of the biggest customers of our infrastructure team, one of the biggest users of our infrastructure hardware. Also because the user space has gone the other way, call it cutting the blue cable. The need to have your PC at your desk hardwired into the network has gone away. So while users have gone all Wi-Fi, we have increased the amount of network ports we consume. So we've essentially just taken over from the end user as the primary consumer of the hardware hardwired network infrastructure. The other change, sorry, is that we're actually piping, I just described the control side, we're actually piping the audio and the video through the network too these days. So that's a massive change, and that's something we have to work really hard with them on. So AV over IP is something we're absolutely using it in production, in teaching spaces, but we kind of treat it with caution and have to work slowly and carefully with our team. We can't just shove it into a building with an older network with limited bandwidth on the uplinks, and that'll just crash everything.
So to exist in that environment that you're in now, where you're no longer just encroaching on a network and a huge infrastructure, a really complex infrastructure like you've got in the unit.
There's kind of 3 parts to that. So one is control, which is where it started for us. I just could not even imagine, and I say this to everybody all the time, I could not imagine still doing things by putting in a controller, programming that controller on a per room basis, and having to manage those code bases on a per room basis, etc. That's just an insane notion to me. And in fact, it was insane while we were doing it, and it used to do my head in daily. So I couldn't be happier to get away from that. So the answer is no, we couldn't do that part without Intermesh or equivalent product. The cohesion that we have from the product, from a documentation and service management point of view, is really vital. One-stop shop to A, support a room that's failing, B, get alerts from it. So it's got the hot list, go into the hot list, go great, cool, my documentation's right there. I can see what the control system's doing and how that's working. I can see where the user's at. All of that stuff, all coming from the same place, is absolutely vital for speed of support and problem solving. And then also just the ability to change something on a fleet level. So to add functionality on a fleet level, again, it would be impossible. It would have been impossible in the pandemic to go and add hybrid functionality to all of our teaching spaces on a per room basis from a control programming point of view. Would have been madness. Thankfully, we didn't have to do that. We just had to add it. Obviously, we did have to do that from a hardware point of view, but that's the reality of hardware, and that's what contractors and resourcing is for from a hugware point of view, as far as I'm concerned. But being able to add that function essentially once and have it available everywhere is hugely important.
When you think about a new organization, so brand new, fledgling, they're only just starting up, what is the very first piece of advice you would give that organization for their AV? The very first thing.
Consider the fleet. So standardization and fleet and support first. So by consider the fleet, I mean consider support, and consider manageability, and scalability. So
That's a lot of things.
unless you're an organization that's going to have 5 AV systems and that's all you're ever going to have, in which case, do what you want. I don't know.
Good luck.
Maybe the stakes are lower, I'm guessing, right? But if you've got any size, or if you're going to have any size, scalability is so important, and scalability means standardization and repeatability. So we manage, from a support and fleet management point of view, we've got over 1,500 AV systems. They're all online and being monitored. We provide really fast response support for the whole lot, and with a team that's very, very small at UQ. I won't go into specific numbers, but all of that is only even slightly possible due to the cohesion of that environment. So
when you think about like a middle-sized business or like an organization that's been established for a while, traditionally it's a little bit harder for them to address emerging technological trends, but it's something that you've been able to do really well at UQ. What mistakes do you see organizations doing when they're trying to integrate or address brand new emerging technologies?
It's really about taking things slowly. Obviously, where possible, which is usually possible. The pandemic would have been one of the exceptions to that, where things absolutely kind of had to get rammed through. But that aside, taking things slowly and testing well. So we don't ever just pick a new product based on the specs of it. It says it does this on the box. Great, let's get 100 of them out there. That goes without saying, as far as I'm concerned, that we don't do that. We get a test unit. Ideally, we don't even buy one to give it a full thorough check. We get a test unit and see what's going on there. And then once we've worked through a whole bunch of stuff, including, for instance, running it past our network infrastructure team and making sure they're happy with all of the security parts, etc., work back and forth with the vendor. If there's some no's around that, no's or maybes, try to get the vendor to work that out, and then put it in a test case. Take one teaching space, for instance, put it in there, tell everybody who needs to know what we're doing and why we're doing it, and that it's a test, etc. Let that run for a semester, see how that went, and then consider it from there.
What else is it that's unique to academia, to your organization type, that most even big business banks and so on don't have to deal with, don't experience?
Yeah, I guess.
Is it like complexity of space type?
Yeah, I probably not, but then probably yes, compared to, say, a bank. I mean, I haven't worked in the AV space in a corporate organization like that. I've only really, like I said, education and justice, so which in my mind are really similar. They've both got these kind of very specific requirements of quite a complex AV space. A courtroom is very similar to a teaching space, with different requirements, different inputs, different outputs, different communication agendas. But that level of complexity is very similar, and the need for consistency, the need for reliability, the need for usability is all really clear. Need for transparency from a user interface point of view, and the people running it are being non-technical, so being it academics or the justice staff themselves. So the non-technical user is definitely not unique to the education space. But yeah, I mean, boardroom is a boardroom. For me, it's a really simple space. If anything, I'm trying to design them even more and more simple as we go, as technology changes at UQ, just trying to strip it back and make them as simple as possible. Doesn't necessarily mean they get cheaper, because the hardware is kind of getting more significant, and the demands of that hardware it's more, when I say simpler, I don't mean cheaper or less AV. I just mean more focused AV. We don't need this big complicated complicated control system just to plug in your laptop and have a meeting, that sort of thing. So getting some of the control system out of there and just making it monitoring. So for me, corporate AV, let's call it, meeting room AV is really straightforward, whereas that teaching and learning piece is actually really complicated. The needs of the space are really varied. There's no two academics that have the same opinion about what an AV system should do. So it needs to have a certain amount of flexibility without being complicated. And those two things are absolutely in contention all the time, and is one of the biggest challenges we have from a design point of view.
What do academics usually want from their AV systems? Are there any common threads?
No.
Turn it on and it'll work.
I mean it genuinely when I say I don't know what they want from me. Like, that's really hard. It really is. And it's because I do know what that guy wants, and I do know what that person wants. But they're totally in conflict. It is really, really hard to know. What they want is they want it to do what they want to do, and they want it to do it really transparently and really quickly. And that is an appropriate thing to want. Of course, that's what they want, but that's the only thing they have in common, is they want it to do what they want to do is the bit that they have in common. What they want to do is really often quite different to each other. So there's two ways to treat that. One is just to pick somewhere in the middle, because we can't just make it too complicated. We can't make it too simple. Pick somewhere in the middle and go, I hope you're able to sort of do what you wanted to do in there. The other way to go is to specialize with spaces and go, well, here's a space that does this, 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 and this, and here's a space that does that, 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 and that. And if you wanted to do this, go over there. If you wanted to do that, go over there. And that becomes a timetabling and space management kind of difficulty that you create for the timetabling and that point of view. And we're kind of basically dealing with it in all of those ways right now. So we're kind of trying to find the balance in the middle. We're trying to have slight specialization with our teaching spaces. We've got collaborative types. We've got front-facing lecture theatre types. We've got sort of more flat floor, but not collaborative seminar front-facing types. And then we've got real basic, smaller kind of tutorial types that are more like a meeting room type system from an AV system point of view. It's like a large boardroom from a system point of view, but they have small tutorials in there. So that's our current status, but it is the thing that I would love to improve more on, and I need to find that engagement with the academic community. It's not my place to make those big decisions about what we should be doing. It's my place to facilitate how we're going to do what we should be doing, and it's still hard to work out what we should be doing.
Okay, so what was the last time something surprised you in what you do, or just in AV in general, where you thought, I didn't see that coming?
USB-C, I didn't see coming. Let's go with that. So it's also one that I'm still getting my head around. So USB-C just came up out of left field, really, as being, it's not just about kind of one cable to push in a whole bunch of stuff. It really changes the way things can work. So for instance, in a meeting room, affording in a meeting room that needs to do all of the hybrid pieces, we used to have, say, a screen and a sound bar with a conferencing bar, let's call it, sound bar with a camera in it, microphones, speakers. All of that's plugged into a micro PC behind the screen. This is all fairly standard. The user can come and log in with a keyboard and mouse and have a meeting with that PC. They've got to log into that PC. They've got to open up their preferred conferencing software, mess around. We don't do Teams rooms or Zoom rooms at UQ because we're essentially platform agnostic. Even if it's a Teams room, that's a better experience, or a Zoom room, it's a better experience. You just kind of can dial the system into a meeting instead of having to crack it open. My point is that in those meeting rooms, we would then have an HDMI lead for a laptop experience, but the laptop experience was kind of just local display only, or you can have it fed through the PC somehow in a Zoom room or Teams rooms. But even that, you're still dialing the meeting room system into a call and then sharing your PC, your laptop through the system. Now with USB-C and a USB-C switching box, you can, or a hub switching box thing, you can plug in your laptop and have it steal all of the peripherals from the room, video, audio, USB, everything. You can steal it all with one cable and have it charging your laptop at the same time, and have your meeting really quickly running your laptop itself, but using the room's peripherals. That's a whole new paradigm. And we've started deploying that as our new meeting room designs. So we don't deploy any meeting rooms without the facility to do all of that with USB-C now. And that's a huge difference. And the next obvious challenge is, how does that work in a teaching space? Really like to do something similar so that you could walk into a teaching space system, plug in your USB-C on your laptop, and basically steal all of the AV peripherals in the room from the teaching space PC, and then run your hybrid class from your laptop from the comfort of your laptop, let's call it, without having to log into this random PC that's sitting in the room and wait for it to load, and then try and find your way to somehow get hold of your emails to join the Zoom call for the session, etc. I don't have the answer to that challenge yet. That's a very current challenge. It's a very fresh one. To be honest, I haven't really started down the road of how we're going to deal with it. It's not an easy one, mainly because peripherals a teaching space has many more peripherals, and they're called so many different things to your computer. They present as all of these technical names, It's like, here's technical box X, here's technical box Y, and they're your audio devices, and which one do you pick? When it's our teaching space PC, we can lock that down, so it picks the right ones every time. Your laptop, we don't have control over what your laptop's going to randomly think is the right thing to pick. So yeah, that's my challenge.
Love it. That's one for the whiteboard. So AI is very much here, and I for one welcome our AI overlords, just in case they're listening. If AV were to become sentient tonight, what's the first thing it would say to you tomorrow morning?
It's a good one. Bring back RS 232. I don't know. Yeah, look, I think if AV became sentient, it would say, Jesus, get me out of here.
Probably.
But yeah, I mean, just to talk about AI in general, I think it's a space that really we still have no idea of the impact that's going to have. Do I think it's going to have an impact? Yes. Do I think it will be big? Yes. Do I have any idea what that impact's going to be? No, not really. Yeah. And I mean that in an AV context and in every context. So
I was expecting something like, please don't unplug me, but that's fine. That was a much better answer.
Yeah, I haven't got a good answer to your curveball question.
Luke, thank you very much again. We love every second of working with you and the wider team as well, and we really appreciate your time coming to give us some very serious and some very funny answers today on the podcast for us. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always great working with everybody at Innovate. It's it's a great culture. Always great people there. Always excellent to work with, and genuinely don't know where we would be without Innovate at this point. It's not just that Innovate was the right choice. It's that Innovate as a company and Inamesh as a product has worked with us to be what we needed it to be. So not only did we pick the right product, back the right horse, that we've worked together. It's been really collaborative. So that's huge. It's way better than it could have been if we picked something else off the shelf at that time, I think.
That's incredible feedback. I think we'll pass that on to the people who actually did that hard work as opposed to us. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much,
Talk
Luke.
soon.